also freeze it. So they call it the Yaguchi plan, and that is launched. So now there's some protest about Save Godzilla. Not really sure why. All it's really done is look creepy and crawl through the street and destroy things. And everyone is tired AF because they've been going for a few days straight at this point. The creature is now returned to totally ruin everyone's life and is much larger now. And better yet, he has officially grown to the point that he has adapted to land travel, as his cooling system using his blood has been perfected. As it lumbers up, this thing is absolutely massive. People begin noping out of there as we head towards another meeting, of course. The creature has entered its fourth form. Apart from the size increase being double what it was when it would retreated back into the water, it has stretched out somewhat. Because the muscle mass and fat mass did not appear to increase in proportion to this growth, it is more skeletal with many more jagged features. Its feet are now just completely digitigrade in structuring, which we saw earlier, but they also appear to be longer. Muscle appears to be somewhat exposed in openings in the skin, likely due to the rapid growth of the body, more so the skeletal system. The ribcage appears to protrude from the skin, somewhat having burst through, and we can see something interesting within the mandible itself. Much like with gigantism in humans, sometimes if the mandible grows to a large size, this can actually cause fractures to form as the arch is broken. As we will see with his fourth form later, the mandible has cracked, indicating that skeletal growth is rampant and near cancerous. Rows of shark-like teeth line the mouth, likely a leftover adaptation from its aquatic era, and the eyes are beady, at this point having lost their fish-like appearance, and now have developed a nictitating membrane to protect the eyes from its own capabilities. Interestingly, when it does attack, they will close much like the great white sharks will as they take a bite of something. And given that this thing is so big, it's sort of hilarious when for some reason an evacuation loudspeaker suggests everyone go back inside and stay inside. Like a building isn't gonna help against this thing, obviously, and it just appears to move in a straight line, so if you see it coming, just walk 3 blocks over. But it continues walking along as they try to figure out where it's even going. So far, they have no clue as to what its actual end goal is, and they decide that they need to hit it with everything they have, otherwise it's going to destroy it. Because it's spilling radioactive material everywhere, they decide to go for the head and legs to decrease the release of it authorizes the use of force, as all explosives are literally used against this thing, but nothing seems to be working. As lead bounces off of its face, they launch missiles, opening the bomb, and it also predicts as then the tanks and artillery barrage continues, but to no avail. So here's why this is hilarious. I mentioned this in my video over the Death Angels and A Quiet Place, but just because you can stop around doesn't mean you're walking away unscathed. There are these little things called energy transfer. When a round is stopped by something hard, the energy on the other side will continue and balloon that tissue, depositing the bleeding. In fact, there are rounds with tanks that won't go through the armor, but will blow the back plate and through shrapnel in the tank itself to take people out. When hitting Godzilla with bunker busters, I don't care how thick its skin is or how strong that armor plating appears to be, the energy transfer would liquefy any cell on the other side. Now there is an idea that will come up later that these are extremophiles, which is a little strange, I will say, but not completely impossible, but just sheer force, a universal constant. I don't care what this thing is. Bonds would be broken, cells would be ruptured, and it would be heavily damaged. So we can assume that the brain is in control of this creature, right? Well, if that's the case, then liquefying the brain would absolutely stop it from moving. I just wanted to throw that out there, and also we'll get to the extremophile conversation here in a moment. The tanks then begin noping at it. Godzilla says, "LOL, that tickles," and then walks across the river, heading towards Tokyo, completely exhausting their capabilities. As the US officials nope out of there too to go talk to their Air Force. So, things are about to go from bad to worse. The US deploys stealth bombers to destroy the thing as it moves towards Tokyo. The skin of Godzilla begins to glow red as the US goes to deploy its non-nuclear arsenal on this creature, as damage to the area is going to be immense. The PM gets evacuated along with the rest of the cabinet, and he's going by helicopter as Yaguchi is going by car. As they look out and see Godzilla, the US then drops this bomb. It broke through the skin as Godzilla begins bleeding. As he does, though, he begins to turn purple, signaling that he's firing his laser, and then releases a fire blast into the ground, which, as we know, obviously is a callback to nuclear bombs. The beam then becomes more focused and blows the bombs out of the sky, and there's also just random beams on his back. This is an adaptation due to the response by the damage incurred by the body via that explosion. The idea is no matter how hard you hit it, it just adapts a way to defend itself, making it pretty much invulnerable. This also blows up the surrounding buildings, and strangely enough, Godzilla gets like a hat trick and destroys the PM's helicopter. I mean, had they taken off like 5 seconds before or after, it would have been totally fine, but with this energy release, Godzilla then falls asleep standing up in the midst of the destruction. This may seem odd, but at this point is likely due to the fact that this is just a bit of a change from his standard operational status. Typically, as we know, he uses oxygen and hydrogen to help power the nuclear fission within his body. Without it, it takes time for the energy to break that up, which takes longer as it uses just the oxygen in the air as opposed to the abundant oxygen and hydrogen in water, considering H2O as well as oxygen. This drops his metabolism exceedingly low, which in turn puts him in a comatose state as the energy slowly goes back up his body after this massive utilization. Gucci throws a bit of a tantrum because of this and then goes to meet at another meeting. With Tokyo being contaminated, they lack the materials and manpower low, morale's not doing so hot. Things are definitely not turning up Milhouse. The leader of agriculture was is really not up to the job, but they need someone to fill the power vacuum. Gucci gives everyone a pep talk at this point about doing it for the fallen and being Alpha Chads. You know, the usual. I literally cannot stress how meetings move this movie forward. They take the tissue sample from Godzilla and keep an eye on him, as well as make sure he isn't waking up, as they determine they have about 2 weeks at the current rate. How they know this? Well, there's really no established patterns with this thing, so that's beyond me. They send in drones to watch Godzilla as they are exposed by what I can only assume is radiation in the area around Godzilla. This means anything electrical is a no-go, but a human is not able to withstand this radiation. One team is set in as they retrieve a sample and find the tissue is unstable and can mutate into anything. This alarms the US, considering it is now understood this tissue could colonize the rest of the planet and push man out of the top of the food chain. This, the US wants to Team America Godzilla using their nuclear arsenal. Satomi at this point says they have no other choice but to drop that on Godzilla, which obviously the citizens and military are not too thrilled about. Yaguchi discusses how that is a bad idea, as they discuss putting their fate in their hands. Yeah, I gotta say, I wouldn't want to do that either, but thankfully being in the US, the UN's laws are really just more suggestions than anything. USA, baby! So they set their plan, and then with a nuke incoming, they will get this coagulation mechanism set up and ready to go, and just not evacuate. The chemical plants are set up and running, and they will need to do a lot to make this work. In 360 hours, Gojira's energy beam will reactivate and devastation will continue. And how do they know this? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. They also have roughly about 2 weeks to evacuate everyone in Tokyo, and with the nuke coming in anyways, it's probably the best option anyhow. Japan at this point isn't doing so hot, as many refugees are just everywhere because it's a really good place, and it shutting down has also caused many other issues. Godzilla will be disastrous for the economy. How many tax dollars do I have to throw at it to feel safe again? Topical humor about completely stupid events, I love it. So we also see Godzilla's scale crack, meaning that he is warming back up. As they continue to try to decipher Maki's info, they realize maybe they just need to fold the printout, not read it two-dimensionally. It's origami that when folded, it shows molecular interactions that are being formed in the body. Essentially, wherever there is water, Godzilla can power the nuclear reactor in his body utilizing oxygen and hydrogen, making it potentially indestructible. Utilizing a supercomputer, though, they solve the riddle and are now able to basically see that his cells are extremophiles. And what's that, I hear you asking? Well, let's discuss. Extremophiles are a form of life that can exist in, well, as you know, extreme areas, such as at the bottom of the ocean near hydrothermal vents, or say like the water bears or tardigrades as they're known, that are found to survive in space for some time. These cells are incredibly stable, which is funny given how Shin Godzilla's instability is causing them to mutate, but they are hard to kill as well and can exist in temperatures and pressure ranges outside what normal cells would essentially succumb to. And I bet you're a lot like me. You're curious as to why this is the case. Well, the reason that they are able to specifically do this is they possess something called the extreme enzyme, which essentially keeps their metabolism of the cell operating at higher temperatures, whereas our enzymes would completely denature, resulting in the death of that cell. Now, typically, these are single-celled organisms, but what is being suggested here is that this is a multicellular organism composed of extremophiles. Because this initial new form of multicellular organism, this is why I believe it is able to use radioactive waste for nutrients. For normal cells, this would destroy them, but they can survive long enough for new adaptations to be impressed upon their DNA, allowing them to adapt quicker. This is essentially why one Shin Godzilla can dethrone man, because this form of life is much tougher than any life found up here in layman's terms. So Izumi at this point goes to talk to Satomi about deploying the Yaguchi plan, which Satomi says is too late. I mean, why not try it before turning the nukes, I suppose? I mean, it seems like a good idea to me, but with very little resistance, Satomi's like, oh yeah, that does make sense. So with 2 days left, it's gonna take 3 days to make all the coagulants. So France talks to